Cool. Okay, so what is intelligent creation education? We're an outreach of this church, so Brooklyn Heights Baptist Church. There's several topics that I cover. One of them is going to be creation science, so that would be like your earth sciences, astronomy, other things like that. Other topics that we cover is creation of the Bible. So we talk about the King James Bible and why we believe it's the Word of God. And we talk about church history. But today we're going to focus on astronomy and the Bible. Heavens declare the glory of God. So the overview, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about what is astronomy, because not everybody knows. There's two models of astronomy. We'll cover the evolution model and the Bibles. The age of the universe, that's another topic we'll talk about today. And lastly, we'll cover the Big Bang. So what is astronomy? Anybody have any ideas?
Study of
stars. There you go. It's a study of celestial objects, space, physical universe as a whole. Basically everything that's above us is astronomy, the study of it. What about famous astronomers? A lot of people don't know that many of the pioneer astronomers accepted creation viewpoint based off their scientific results. I'll give you an example. Arthur Eddington from 1882 to 1994 was trained in astronomy at the British Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England. He pioneered work in astrophysics with emphasis on stellar structure. He was also the first to calculate the diameter of giant stars. In 1919, he measured the bending of starlight from the solar eclipse that took place, and that verified Einstein's general relativity theory. And then in his publications, he taught that creation needed to be measured, explored, appreciated. And in Science and the Unseen World in 1929, he declared the meaning of life was to be found in spiritual rather than in the scientific God alone. He's one of the pioneers in astronomy. David Fabricius, in 1564 through 1617, was a Dutch astronomer who discovered the first known variable star in 1596, which was later named Mira. Now, variable star is a star that contracts and expands. Today, Mira is thought to expand and contract over a 331-day period, somewhat like a soap bubble. It varies in brightness, and he was also a minister of a local Dutch Reformed church. You have James Ferguson, from 1710 to 1776, was a Scottish astronomer and instrument maker. He rejected random chance beginnings with the solar system. He did promote, however, the nebular hypothesis theory. We'll kind of talk a little bit about that. The solar system rather than direct creation, but gave God the credit for giving all the atoms their proper initial position and the speed at the moment of creation. Another pioneer astronomer was Pierre Gassendi, and he lived up to 1655. He was a friend of Galileo. Gassendi was the first to observe planetary transit across the face of the sun, that of Mercury in 1631, so it's whenever Mercury crossed the front of the sun. He was first to observe it. He supported Galileo's heliocentric idea that God created the earth to revolve about the sun. Gassendi also believed that God had created the atoms of the universe in a single stroke. He correctly taught that creation was open to detailed scientific analysis. You have Caroline Herschel from 1750 to 1848. She was lived in the shadow of her brother William Herschel and also astronomer nephew John Herschel. William discovered the planet Uranus in 1781. Caroline worked alongside him. Now, during that time, she generally taught herself the mathematic details of the heavens and soon began her own observations. She discovered 14 new nebula, including what's today called the Andromeda Galaxy. Between 1786 and 1797, she discovered 8 new comets, which is an amazing accomplishment back then. All her life, Caroline Herschel displayed a solid Christian testimony. And we have Henrietta Swan Leavitt, 1868 through 1921. She developed a childhood interest in astronomy. She discovered 4 new nova, which is basically exploding stars, and cataloged more than 2,400 variable stars. So all these people I just showed you believed in God and the Bible. Here's some other ones that I'll just briefly touch on. There's Tycho Brahe, Galileo, John Kepler, Isaac Newton, and then, like we mentioned, John and William Herschel. Now, these men believed in the Bible and God. In fact, most people don't know that Isaac Newton wrote more than 4 million words about theology. So there's two models. We'll talk about two models. We have God's Word, and we have man's Word. So the basic creation model, if you can see I have this giant chart here, about 6,000 years ago, God created everything in 6 literal days. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ came and died, and we have today. The evolution model, it says 14 to 20 billion years ago, there was a Big Bang. About 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth formed, cooled down. 3 billion years ago, the first life was formed from the soup of nothingness. And today, we have everything that you see. We'll start with the evolution viewpoint. Now, I don't want to misrepresent their viewpoint, so I pulled this right out of their textbook, college textbook I have. So, evolution viewpoint of the birth of the universe. The expansion of the universe began with a hot and dense Big Bang about 14 billion years ago. This is an overview from a textbook. When they talk about galaxies and cosmic recycling plants, the early universe contained only 2 chemical elements, and that was hydrogen and helium. And all the other elements were made by stars and recycled from one stellar generation to the next within galaxies. So basically all the elements we see today were created in stars, is what they believe. Now, stars are born in clouds of gas and dust. Planets may form in surrounding disk. Then the stars shine with energy released by nuclear fission, which ultimately manufactures the heavy elements and from the hydrogen and helium. Once the stars know this life cycle, massive stars explode, they die, scatter elements they produce into space. This is what they believe. And about 4.5 billion years ago, we had the Earth that formed, and it was only about 2% of the original hydrogen and helium had been converted to heavier elements by this time, is what they teach. So this is right from the cosmic perspective, 2008's college textbook on astronomy. I like this quote they put up there: remember that we think the universe is about 14 billion years old. And really, there's a lot of viewpoints. That's why I say 14 to 20 billion, depends on who you listen to. So we have the Bible viewpoint. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, Genesis 1:1. And Genesis 1:3 and 4, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God said the light was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening morning would be first day. So God was the light in the first day. There wasn't any stars or anything at that point. If you read later down in Genesis 1:14, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament above the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament above of the heaven to give light upon the earth. I like that statement, he made the stars also, because there's like a lot of them, just in that one verse. And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness, God saw it was good, and the evening morning were the 4th day. So in the creation viewpoint, God created the earth on day 1, and the sun, moon, and stars on day 4. Mm-hmm. I like this verse in Exodus 20:11. A lot of people say, well, were the 6 days of creation really literal? Well, God wrote it down in the stones, 10 Commandments. He said, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. I don't know, God thought it was literal. Here's a question for you. If you read in Genesis 1:12 and 13, and the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whoso was in itself after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening morning were the 3rd day. If there were millions of years between the days of Genesis, how could God have created plants on day 3, plants and trees, and then they would survive until day 4 when he created the sun? It's kind of an interesting thought. Mm-hmm. So implications of the Big Bang. What are some problems here with the Big Bang in the Bible? God's creation wasn't 6 days like it clearly says in the Bible. The meaning of very good in Genesis 1:31 really probably didn't mean very good because it wasn't completed. There was death before sin. That's one of the biggest issues. The Genesis flood was not worldwide if you accept the viewpoint of long periods of time. Colossians 1:16, when Christ says he created all things, it really doesn't mean all things. And what do you think the heavens declare? God or evolution? Well, let's look at it. We'll start with the age of the universe. To kind of give you a background on this, let's say that you were scuba diving and you ran across a ship that had sunk and there was treasure inside it. And in that treasure chest was a bunch of coins. Now, the coins had different dates on them. You could still read. How would you determine when that boat probably sank? Anybody have any ideas?
It would be after the latest date of the coin.
There you go. So it's not the oldest coin you're worried about, it's the most recent.
Right.
So if there's like a coin that says, 1800, and then there's another coin that says 1900, the 1900 limits the age of that treasure chest. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So when we talk about the age of the universe, I'm going to give examples that limit the age of the universe from a scientific perspective. You have to bear with me, I have a sore throat, so I'm drinking lots of water to keep going. Okay, we'll start with evidence from supernovas. And supernovas when a star blows up, and astronomers observe this about every 30 years. The star dies into a supernova. They're pretty cool looking. In fact, there's the Crab Nebula and supernova 1987A. Now what's really cool about the Crab Nebula, this is recorded in history. So the Sung Dynasty helped us know the approximate age of the Crab Nebula, and they estimate it to be 1100 AD. So in the first year, and this is what they wrote about it, in the first year of the period of Chinho, the fifth moon, the day Chihu, the guest star, appeared approximately several degrees southeast of Tinquan, after more than it gradually became invisible. This count was also verified by Japanese, Arabic medical textbook and the Native Americans. So that's kind of cool. So we know that that one blew up at that time frame. But what are we going to talk about supernovas? Well, we're going to talk about how many have we seen blown up. So I have different columns here. At the left, you'll see the different stages: first stage, second stage, third stage. Basically, this means first stage is the recent explosion. Second stage would be a more distant time explosion, and third stage would be millions of years. Now, if the universe was billions of years old, we should expect to see a few in the first stage, the stars that exploded. The second stage, we should look at maybe 2,260, and the third stage, we should probably see more than 5,000 remnants from the supernovas. Now, if the Earth is less than 7,000 years old, we should see 2 in the first stage, about 125 in the second stage, and we shouldn't see any in the third stage of the supernova remnant. Now, the actual number observed so far is 5 in recent time. There's 200 in the second stage, and we haven't seen any in the third stage. This would be like a limiting factor for the age of the universe. It fits consistently with what the Bible teaches on supernova remnants. So if the universe is billions of years old, how come there's less than 300 supernovas or dead stars? Shouldn't there be many thousands of them? Are the stars wrong, or is evolution theory? Something to think about. Genesis 22:17, God said, "I will multiply thy seed as the stars which are in heaven, the sand which is upon the seashore." It's kind of interesting, like when they compare the two. In Jeremiah 33 verse 22, the Bible says that the hosts of heaven cannot be numbered. Neither can the sands of the seas be measured. I mean, the Bible always taught that, and that was written 2,500 years ago. And back then, we couldn't necessarily, we could see a certain amount of stars, but we did not know the vastness of space as it is. So, stars blow up, we see them blow up. Well, how do stars form? That's a question. So the origin of stars, there's 2 viewpoints. In the evolutionary model, in the Big Bang, they say that stars evolved over billions of years from clouds of dust, and we'll cover that in a little bit, and that stars were created before the Earth. The Bible says the Earth was created on day 1, the sun, moon, and stars were created on day 4. Let's start with the biblical creation model, then we'll go to the evolution model, and we'll look at the evidence. So a biblical creation model, back there, God made the 2 great lights, greater light to rule the day and lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. That's Genesis 1:16. In Isaiah 40 verse 26, the Bible says, "Lift up your eyes on high and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out the host by their number. Now, if you don't know, hosts in the Old Testament often reference to stars. Now, in Exodus 20:11, for in 6 days God made everything. In Psalms 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God. In Psalms 33, verse 6, the word of the Lord were the heavens made. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the hosts of them. So God spoke them into existence. Psalms 148, verse 5, he commanded, and they were created. So this is a biblical worldview of stars. So God spoke them into existence on day 4, is what the Bible teaches. Now, another question, and we'll get into the evolutionary model. If stars evolve, starburst should equal star deaths. Now, if novas and supernovas are star deaths, and we've observed many of those, where is the evidence for star bursts? Now we'll talk about that. So the evolutionary model says that star birth occurs when gravity squeezes a cloud of gas to a point that forms a star with a core hot enough to sustain nuclear fusion. That's right out of the Cosmic Perspective, 2008 edition. That's the common held view on star formation. Now, there's a problem with that. The popular theory that stars form from cloud and gas and dust through gravitational contraction, which leads to nuclear fusion, doesn't make sense because gas and dust clouds will expand, not contract. So basically, it's Boyle's law. When gas heats up, it expands. So if it's trying to contract, it'll always expand. Something that's interesting, I didn't have time to put all of it in here, but nebula, every nebula we can see is expanding, not contracting. So that's kind of interesting. So everything we can observe is expanding, not contracting. So I'll just write down a few problems with star formation. Where do the gases come from? That's a big problem. How could they by chance develop? We haven't observed the birth of one star. We'll talk more about that. There's no physical mechanism in the near vacuum of outer space to compress gas into a ball. There's not enough time, according to Science News 1979. He wrote, there has not been enough time since the beginning of the Big Bang for such an algorithmation of stars to gather together out of originally homogeneous universe of evenly spread thin gas. Some more problems. There's no effective mechanism has been shown whereby stars can form from outflowing hydrogen gas. And then Fred Whipple, The Mystery of Comets, wrote precisely how a section of an interstellar cloud collapse gravitational into a star is still a challenging theoretical problem. Astronomers have yet to find an interstellar cloud actual process of collapse. And that's kind of one of the hopes with the new telescope they're going to put up is, well, maybe we can observe a star forming in one of these nebulas. I predict that we'll see more stars, and I think that's it. I don't think they'll see anything forming. In Don DeYoung, Astronomy in the Bible, he wrote, he's a PhD in physics, the complete birth of a star has never been observed. The principles of physics demand some special conditions for star formation, also for a long time period. A cloud of hydrogen gas must be compressed to sufficiently small size so that gravity dominates. Let's see. Okay, in space, however, almost every gas cloud in light years in size, hundreds of times greater than the critical size needed for a stable star. As a result, outward gas pressures cause these clouds to spread out farther, not contract. So basically, all he's saying is, physically, like from physics, gas in space will always expand, and that's actually all we observe. Now, it's estimated that there's enough stars out there for every individual to own 11 trillion, which is a lot of stars. I don't know how to say this number, but it's 70 with 21 zeros. If you divide that out by 20 billion years down into 1 year, that would be 3.5 trillion stars should be forming every year. And if you divide it down in a minute, we should see 6,655,000 stars forming every minute. But we have yet to observe one form. It's kind of interesting. I think that's more confirmation that God made the stars on day 4 and they're not forming anymore. So the Bible says in Psalms 147, verse 4 and 5, he telleth the number of the stars, he calleth them all by their names. Lord, God, great is our Lord, and great power, his understanding is infinite. No kidding. If you could name every star, I mean, your understanding would have to be infinite. It's just crazy. So there's a general, actually this is Haynes Alvin. He's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He wrote an Evolution of the Solar System, NASA, 1976. There's a general belief that stars are forming by gravitational collapse. In spite of vigorous efforts, no one yet found any observable observational indication of conformation. Thus, the generally accepted theory of stellar formation may be one of the hundreds of unsupported dogmas which constitute a large part of present-day astrophysics. If you pick up any astronomy book, they teach us that's fact, yet we have no observational evidence. And it's well known in the astronomy community, but they don't put that in the textbooks. Now, a nebula is a large amount of gas and dust spread out in immense volume. All the stars began in their life as part of the nebula. This is right out of Princeton Hall Earth Science. This is what they teach. Gravity can pull some of these gases and dust clouds in together, dust and a nebula together. The interacting cloud is then called a protostar. A star is born when the contracting gas and dust become so hot that nuclear fusion starts. So that's Princeton Hall Earth Science 2001. Now, is this statement based on science or belief in evolution? It's based on belief in evolution. We still haven't observed this. So evidence from galaxies. We'll talk about limiting, some limiting factors from galaxies. Here's a couple. You have M101 and M51, the Rockwell galaxy. They're really cool looking, but still, how little do we know about them? The spirals, like our galaxy, are formed by differential rotation, and we'll show a picture of that in a second. The farther from the center, the slower the rotation. So the closer you are to the center, the faster the speed of spinning, and the farther away you are, it moves slower. That's this common knowledge. The very distant galaxies should not have time to develop spirals, yet they still have them. So they're also must be young. Also, after a few rotations, spiral arms should be gone. Each rotation is about 700 million years. So basically the argument says is that the farthest out galaxies we can see still have spiral arms. But in theory, they shouldn't. They should actually be blurred together. And Roswell Humphreys, he's a PhD in physics, evidence for a young world. He wrote, the stars of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, rotate about a galactic center with different speeds. The inner ones rotating faster than the outer ones. The observed rotation speeds are so fast that if our galaxy were more than a few hundred million years old, it would be featureless disk. Let's see, of stars instead of the present spiral shape. And this is based off of what we know about our own galaxy. So the Milky Way is about 200 to 400 billion light years in diameter. It's also 100,000 light years across. Sorry, I said that wrong. Milky Way is 200 to 400 billion stars, and its diameter is about 100,000 light years across. And we have it has both a pronounced disk component exhibiting spiral structure, and the Milky Way galaxy belongs to a local group of 3 larger galaxies and 30 smaller ones. This is kind of interesting to think about. Okay, let's see if I can get back here. So evidence from galaxies. Many aspects of evolution of galaxies cannot be yet determined with any certainty. And that was Joseph Sill, professor of astronomy at University of Oxford, the Big Bang 2001. Still, we can't explain it. So, what's it show on your screen there? Okay, I'm just making sure it's saying why I just did something weird. There shouldn't be galaxies out there at all. And even if there are galaxies, the problem of explaining the existence of galaxies has proven to be one of the thorniest in cosmology. This James Treefill, PhD in physics, The Dark Side of the Universe, 1988. So the Facts on File Dictionary of Astronomy in 1994, this book said galaxies must have condensed out of gases expanding from the Big Bang. Details of the formation of galaxies are still highly uncertain, as is their subsequent evolution. So why is that any more scientific than in the beginning God created? I mean, it's pretty much the same. Evidence from comets. The comets also limit the age of our solar system. You have long period comets and short period comets. There's just some different examples. I know Gene was asking about that, the one that came by recently. So you have evidence from comets. If the solar system is billions of years old, like conventionally hot, then long period comets should not exist because comets always are losing material. So as they fly through the sky, they're constantly breaking apart. And short period comets are losing material as well, and they have a life expectancy less than 10,000 years. Now there's a good book, if you've never seen it. Let's see if I can get my mouse to work here. In the Beginning, Walt Brown. So this is actually this one right here. It's a really good book. I would encourage everybody to get it. If you don't want to buy it, there's a website, creationscience.com. It's free on there. You can read the whole thing for free. It's a really good book.
Walt too?
Do what?
Walt Brown, you said?
Yep, Walt Brown. It's really good. It's creationscience.com. So he wrote, and he gives out the mathematical formulas that comets must be less than 10,000 years old based off their current rate of decay. So the evolution model postulates that like comets are being replaced by an Oort cloud. Now there's a lot of problems with the Oort cloud. This cloud supposedly exists outside of our like visible range, 50,000 astronomical units, which would be the distance like from us to the sun is 1 astronomical unit, so it's 50,000 of those. So the biggest problem with the Oort cloud is it's never been observed. Another problem is there's no evidence that it actually exists scientifically, and there's not enough mass in the hypothetical Oort cloud. Now, let's see, comet material is supposedly leftover material from the formation of planets, and we know about 500 long period comets right now, and there's about 100 short period comets that we've cataloged. So the answer to this problem, astronomers began to conclude that while long period comets come out of the Oort cloud, short period comets must come out of the Kuiper belt, which was recently, Kuiper belt's just that right around Uranus. So the Kuiper belt is a donut-shaped distribution of comets just beyond the orbit of Neptune there. Now, there's about 600 objects in the Kuiper belt that we know about as of 2002. There may be more now. Most of these objects are 100 to 500 kilometers in diameter. That's pretty big. Now, that's too large for a comet. The diameter of the average comet is like 10 kilometers. Now, if we were to see a comet a comet that's 100 kilometers in size, it would make a pretty impressive sight. You see the ones that fly by now, that are like 10 kilometers. Now, the largest one we've ever observed was a Hale-Bopp in 1997, and it had a diameter of 40 kilometers. So, all of the Kuiper belt objects are allegedly discovered are far bigger than the average comet. Now, Donald D. Young, in Astronomy of the Bible, wrote, the existence of the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud of comets has not been verified. Perhaps there is an alternative. The presence of comets may be evidence that the solar system is not as old as often assumed. So the problem here is they believe comets come from leftover material from planets, and they're still around, and they couldn't be around. That's the problem. It's more of a limiting factor. So Timothy Ferris, the whole shebang, State of the Universe report, 1997, wrote, though the Oort cloud has not been yet observed, the theory accounts so well for the distribution of comets orbits that most astronomers today accept its existence. I just got a comment here. Definition of faith is an unquestioning belief that does not require proof of observation. Okay, switch here. Okay, this is right out of the Cosmic Perspective, 2008. I don't know if you can read that or not, but it basically just gives an example of what the Oort cloud looks like. It says it extends out to about 50,000 astronomical units, contains about 1 trillion comets, even though we can't see any of them. Comet orbits have randomization as far as how they orbit. The Kuiper belt exists about 30 to 50 astronomical units. We can actually observe some of that. I just think it's amazing how emphatically textbooks present something as such as the Oort cloud. Now, many scientific papers are written each year about the Oort cloud, its proponents, its origin, its evolution, yet there is not yet a shred of direct observational evidence for its existence. Who said that? Anybody have an idea who said that? It was Carl Sagan. Now, he's a famous evolutionist, 1985, in the book Comets, page 201. It's well known that nobody's observed it, but it's just a theory that's still out there. Now, Danny Faulkner has a PhD in astronomy. He wrote in the technical journal, More Problems of the Oort cloud, Comet cloud, in 2001, page 11. Since it can't be detected, the Oort cloud is still a non-scientific concept. This is not bad science, but non-science, masquerading as science. The existence of comets is good evidence that the solar system is only a few thousand years old. Now we'll talk about the moon. Here's a question. Has anybody ever seen the moon through a telescope? Few people? Okay, you ever think about why we always see the same side of the moon? I don't know if you knew that. Like, its orbit's always the same as ours. So we always see the same side of the moon as it's spinning. Why does it orbit the Earth in such a way that we always see the same size? And why is it exactly the same size in the sky as our sun? So like when we see a solar eclipse, we see the chromosphere of the sun is exactly the same size. It's kind of interesting things. Now the Earth's force of gravity pulls on the moon, and the moon pulls back. This is known as Newton's third law of motion. Now this causes the moon to accelerate in its orbit and slowly spirals away from the Earth each year about 4 centimeters. It's not a huge problem, but every year the moon's getting 4 centimeters farther away from us. Now, if you take the inverse square law, which says the force of attraction between two objects is inversely proportional to the squared the distance between them. Basically, if you take an object, you make it a third of the distance, the force of attraction between these two objects is 9 times greater. So the closer they get together, the higher the gravitational pull. Now, if we were to take that, and knowing the moon's getting farther away, it must have been closer, we can go back in time with our current observations. So if you look at 1,000 years ago, the moon would have been about 125 feet closer. 1,000,000 years ago, 28.4 miles closer. It's still not a huge deal, but your tidal waves would be a lot higher. 10 million years ago, 284 miles closer. 100 million years ago, 2,840 miles closer. 1 billion years ago, 28,400 miles closer. And then 1.4 billion years ago, we would have been connected to the moon. If you take the current decay, it's spiraling away. Now what's interesting about that is the moon is taught that it formed about 4.5 billion years ago, same time as the Earth. This is a real big problem for the evolution theory, that 1.4 billion years ago, they would have been in direct contact with each other. So what about the origin of the moon? There's 3 different theories taught today in schools. They believe the fission theory, which says the Earth spun so fast during its formation that a chunk of it broke off and the moon was formed. Well, the problem with that is the moon's chemically different than the Earth, a lot more chemically different. The Earth, hypothetically, can never spin fast enough for that to happen, and then if it did break off, it would have broke off into 1 billion pieces. The capture theory teaches that the moon was captured by the Earth's gravity. So what's the problem with that? Again, the moon would need to lose a lot of energy while it's coming to the Earth to be captured. It would have been rather slingshotted rather than captured. There's just no mathematical formula yet for that. And then you have the third one, which is the co-creation theory, that the Earth and moon formed at the same time, 4.5 billion years ago, from debris orbiting the sun. So the problem with that is the Earth and moon are, again, chemically different. So they're right next to each other forming. Why would they be so chemically different? It's unlikely that the gravitational attraction would be strong enough to maintain this ratio. And remember, it's in the exact gravitational pull that you always see the same side of it, and the exact distance so it appears the same size as the sun. There's a lot of anomalies just in that one thing. I believe it's so God put us in a unique position to where we can know more about our solar system, like for instance the sun from the moon.
That's right.
So that makes it even more mathematically impossible that if we captured the moon, how did it capture in such a way that we always see the same side? I mean, that's kind of crazy. So the origin of the moon is still unresolved. That was evolutionist Snyder. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name.
Rizika.
Rizika? There you go. In Job 26, verse 7, it was written 3,500 years ago. God said he stretched out the north over the empty place and hangeth the earth upon nothing. The Bible always taught the earth hung upon nothing, which is the best that we can know right now. If you look at the earth in space, it's just kind of there. It's kind of interesting. Evidence for magnetic fields. We'll put a little bit closer now. So we started with, the stars blowing up, star formation in galaxies, and we went to the moon, and now we're going to get the Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic strength has declined 10% in the last 150 years, and it's estimated 40% in the last 1,000 years. just by this alone, we know that the Earth couldn't be more than 25,000 years old with the current magnetic field decline. That we'd all be dead by now. Now, something I thought was really cool was in the book Taking Back Astronomy by Dr. Jason Lyle. It's a really good book. Dr. Russ Humphreys, again, he has PhD in physics and he's also a biblical creationist. He produced a model of planetary magnetic fields, which explains the present strength for every magnetic field in all the planets in the terms of biblical creation. Now, in essence, this model that he predicted not only had the initial strength of like the magnetic field at the moment of creation, assuming that the universe is 6,000 years old, the model also computes the present strengths based on 6,000 years of decay from electrical resistance. Now, impressively, this biblically based model is able to account for the present measured magnetic fields of all the known planets, even as many of the moons. But what's even more impressive is what Jason Lyle wrote about Russ Humphreys. Of course, almost any model can be adjusted to fix existing data. So it is perhaps even more impressive that Dr. Humphreys' model successfully predicted the present magnetic field strengths of the planets Uranus and Neptune before they were actually measured by the Voyager spacecraft. So he created this model of magnetic fields based off biblical creation and predicted what the magnetic field would be like for Uranus and Neptune before we even knew what it was, and it was actually the same as what his model predicted. Kind of interesting. A lot of evolutionists always get on the creationists about predictions, but that was one prediction which, based off the Bible, was right. He also predicted that Mars would have a remnant or a permanent magnetism, which has now been confirmed. It's kind of interesting. So the Big Bang is our last topic. 15 to 20 billion years ago, explosion occurred, creating the universe. The universe began as an infinitesimal hot fireball scrambling of space and time. That comes from the handy Space Answer book. Sounds pretty scientific. The Bible has a Big Bang. Did you guys know that? In 2 Peter, verse 3:10, it says, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise." That's Big Bang. "And the elements shall melt with fervent heat, the earth, and also the works that are therein shall be burnt up." So, what God's saying is you got to get saved before this happens. Be too late then. So what's the evidence for Big Bang? They claim that redshifts are evidence for Big Bang. Cosmic background radiation, element abundances, and education system and media. I think it's probably the biggest evidence. Education system and media. And then we'll talk about evidences against the Big Bang. Redshift, cosmic background radiation, galaxy formation, spiral galaxies, supernova remnants, distribution of galaxies, first and second laws of thermodynamics, medium and heavy elements, and star formation. I'm not going to cover all these because we already talked about some of them, but I could actually list about 20 more. So let's start with the Big Bang. This is what it's taught. So they believe the universe has no center point. It was whenever the Big Bang occurred, space, time, and matter expanded all at the same time. Now, does the sudden explosion of nothing into something sound like a miracle? I think it does. Now, Paul Davis, he's a physicist and evolutionist, wrote in his book, The Edge of Infinity, describes the Big Bang this way. The Big Bang represents the instantaneous suspension of physical laws, the sudden and bright flash of lawlessness, and to allow something to come out of nothing. It represents a true miracle. But that's science, apparently. Something from nothing. That's crazy. This is a huge problem with the Big Bang, and it's known as the principle of conservation of angular momentum. Basically, this law teaches that when something's spinning, whatever, like an object, the center part's spinning faster than the outer part because it's closer, has less of a distance to spin. The outer part has more faster of a distance. Because of that, if something was spinning and it broke apart, everything that broke apart would always be spinning in the same direction. That's what this law says. So it's a real big issue for the Big Bang, and this is why. The angular momentum would have caused the sun to spin very rapidly. And the big problem is our sun only spins really slow, and our planets spin very rapidly. So why is the center part of our solar system spinning slow and the outer part spinning faster? It's opposite of what this principle teaches. In fact, although the sun has 99% of the mass of the solar system, it only has 2% of the angular momentum. This pattern is directly opposite to the pattern predicted for nebular hypothesis. This is Dr. H. Reed's Origin of the Solar System, 1978. Now, another good quote from Dr. Stuart Ross Taylor in his book, Solar System Evolution, A New Perspective, and he's at Cambridge University in 1992, he wrote, "The ultimate origin of the solar system's angular momentum remains obscure. He's a well-known evolutionist." And then we'll end with Frank D. Stacy, Physics of the Earth. He said, "One of the detailed problems is then to explain how the sun itself requires 99.9% of the mass of the solar system, but only 2% of the angular momentum." It's a big issue for the Big Bang. So if everything's supposed to spin the same direction when it breaks off from the Big Bang, why are Venus, Uranus, and possibly Pluto rotating backwards? That's kind of a good question. I don't know if you can read that quote down the bottom, but it says, "We have some theories about how the spin of Venus may have been pulled into sync with Earth. Unfortunately, they don't really work, at least not yet." That's David Harry Greenspan. He's an assistant professor of astrophysical and planetary scientists at the University of Colorado. Actually, from the book Venus Revealed, it said, "We haven't exactly learned to decipher these clues yet, and the theory of origin of planetary rotation is currently slightly confusing. It seems we will never have a theory predicting in detail how a solar system arises from a disk." And that's all from, a famous evolutionist. And yet these are taught, if I was to bring some of my college textbooks here, they're taught right in there as fact. Now, 8 of the 91 moons that we know about rotate backwards. And Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune have moons orbiting in both directions. Why is that? That's kind of funny. Now, here's a chemistry mystery of the Big Bang. Why is the sun 98% of the sun hydrogen or helium, when Mercury, Venus, and Earth are less than 1% of hydrogen and helium? It's all questions that nobody really knows how to answer. Why are 8 planets so different from each other and from the sun? I have a theory about that. I think it's because God created them that way to disprove any future theories of evolution. I really do. I think that's one reason why they're so different. And really, it declares the majesty of our Lord. The heavens declare the glory of the Lord. The Bible said in Isaiah, verse 40-22, "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth." 2,800 years ago, God inspired in the Bible that the earth was round. Kind of interesting. So why do some galaxies spin backwards? David Tolliver couldn't make it tonight, but he was actually debating a guy, and he said, well, if it's true, things spin backwards, the Big Bang, why don't we see galaxies spin backwards? Well, we actually do see galaxies that spin backwards. CNN.com in February 11, 2002 said, "Goofy galaxy spins in wrong direction." It's a pretty interesting article. Entire galaxies spin backwards. And I have a theory about this. I believe that 6,000 years ago, God created everything in 6 literal 24-hour days, and 420 years ago was a flood. 2,000 years ago, Christ died on the cross for our sins. I believe God did this to disprove any future theories and to confound humans' intellect. We try to figure out everything. Now, here's a question. If we take John 3:16, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life." Why did God die for the sins of the world if it were created by natural causes apart from him? It's kind of like leaves him out of the whole picture of the whole thing. The Big Bang teaches that there's no special place in the universe. Earth is not a special place. There's no special place in the universe. There's no center of the universe, is what the Big Bang teaches. And the universe is homogeneous, basically meaning it's the same everywhere. The same physical laws and all that, which I don't know how you could possibly prove it's the same here as it is 14 billion light years there. This is a little bit more technical, this next part. I'll try to do my best to explain it. We're talking about redshift of starlight. It looks confusing like a science textbook, but basically, the redshift of starlight describes the expanse of the universe and the distance of galaxies from the Earth. So in theory, if things are moving away from the Earth, they have a redshift in the light spectrum because the light's being stretched. And if they're coming closer to us, we have a blue shift. That's all it's saying. That's what redshift starlight is. It's kind of like when you hear like a train go by or a car go by, when the sound, like if they're honking the horn, it sounds like a different pitch when it goes farther away than when it comes closer. It's because the sound waves are compressed and then they're stretched out as they're going away. It's the same concept of redshift and starlight. So here's the standard redshift interpretation. Redshift is roughly proportional. I can't even say it, proportional to the distance of galaxies, which is based on the standard interpretation, means that the universe must be billions of years old. So, in other words, we should see redshifts at all distance across the light spectrum. So if it's this color, you can't really point at it from here. You see in Galaxy 1, it goes down to this bar and that bar and that bar. Basically, if it's that color, it would be this distance. If it's that color, it's this distance. If it's that color, it's this distance. So that's kind of what they're saying. Now, this is what Big Bang predicts is the top line. The Big Bang model predicts a homogeneous universe, which being redshifts across the whole spectrum. And what do we observe? We actually see quantized redshifts at 1 million light year intervals. Now, what does that mean? That is probably one of the biggest evidences against the Big Bang. That actually, they don't even talk about it in any of the modern textbooks I have, which I thought was interesting. Because no, now redshifts are galaxy distances. Now, basically what we're saying is, okay, every 1 million light years apart, we see a concentric circle around our galaxy. Now, what is that? Has that been confirmed? It has been. So there are now very firm evidence that redshifts galaxies are quantized. And that was in 1984. Now, Russell Humphreys, again, in a technical journal wrote, astronomers have confirmed that numerical values of galaxy redshifts are quantized, tending to fall into distinct groups. That would mean that galaxies tend to be grouped in conceptual spherical shells concentric around our home galaxy. In other words, where we're placed in the universe, all these galaxies are concentrically apart from us. Now, if we were 1 million light years in a different spot, that it wouldn't appear that way. It would appear completely different, which means that our galaxy is somewhere near the center of the universe. This is one of the strongest evidences that's not really often spoke of. Now, the shells turn out to be on the order of 1 million light years apart. The groups of redshifts to be distinct from each other only if our viewing location is less than 1 million light years from the center. So if we were more than 1 million light years away from the center, it wouldn't appear in that like spherical shells. So the odds of the Earth having such a unique position in the cosmos by accidents are less than 1 in 1 trillion. Thus, redshift quantization is evidence against the Big Bang and evidence for a galiocentric cosmology, meaning that our galaxy is somewhere near the center of the universe. Now, confirmation from Hubble. W. Napper and Guthrie wrote quantized redshifts, and that was the Journal of Astrophysics and Astronomy, 1997. From the Hubble Space Telescope, the redshift distribution has been found to be strongly quantized in the galiocentric frame of reference. In 1997, an independent study of 250 galaxy redshifts confirmed TIPS observations. Napper and Guthrie's results show quantization occurs at least out to medium distance, in the order of 100 million light years. Other distances from the Hubble Space Telescope show similar clustering of redshifts out to the billions of light years. It's kind of interesting. So implications of the quantized redshifts, the quantization distribution of galactic redshifts observed by various astronomers seems to contradict the Copernican principle and all cosmology founded on it, including the Big Bang. The observable evidence from many astronomers, and now confirmed by the Hubble telescope, is that we are in a special place in the universe after all, and the Big Bang is in big trouble. This is Halton Hart. He's a staff astronomer at Mount Wilson in the Palmer Observatory for 29 years. In Quasars, Redshifts, and Controversies, 1987, wrote, the fact of measured values of redshifts do not vary continually but come in steps. Certain preferred values is so unexpected that conventional astronomy has never been able to accept it, in spite of the overwhelming observational evidence. Now, this is one of the biggest finds, in astronomy that we know of, that shows that we're somewhere near the center. Kind of interesting. Now, we don't believe it's a problem for the Bible. God wrote 17 times in the Bible that he stretched out the heavens. If you want some biblical scientific models of creation, there's a book down there, Starlight and Time. It's really good. It's got some like physics calculations and stuff of models that can account for the shift of red light based off a Galileo-centered universe and all that. It was the same guy who predicted the magnetic fields of Uranus and Neptune. And probably the most common objection to a young universe is distant starlight problem. There are galaxies in the universe that are incredibly far away. And these distances are so extreme, even light would take billions of years to travel from these galaxies to Earth, is what's commonly taught. So if you were to read an astronomy textbook, and they say when you're looking at a star or a galaxy 14 billion years away, that you're looking into the past, is what they commonly teach. Now, there are actually several different models that can account for starlight getting here in thousands of years. There's actually about 4 that I know of that have very little issues with them. But the real issue here is the Big Bang model has its own light travel time issue. And that is this. It's called the horizon problem. Now, if you can see on there, can you guys see point A and B? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's suppose that point A is hot and point B is cold. Today the universe has expanded and point A and B are now widely separated. Now, according to the Big Bang model, when the universe was still very small, it would have developed different temperatures in different locations. Now, this is our cosmic background radiation argument. However, the universe has an extremely uniform temperature at great distances beyond the farthest known galaxies. In other words, point A and B almost have exactly the same temperature today. Now, this is the problem. How did point A and B come to be the same temperature? They can only do this by exchanging energy. So light is the fastest way to transfer energy since nothing can travel faster. So using Big Bang supporters' own assumptions, such as uniformitarianism and naturalism, there has not been enough time in 14 billion years for light to get from point A to point B. Yet, because they're too far apart, this is their lifetime travel problem, and a very serious one. After all, A and B have almost the same temperatures today and must have exchanged light several times. So when people say, well, they're far away, distant star galaxies, prove that the universe is old, it's the same problem for Big Bang people. They don't understand how the light got from point A and B many, many times. It's the same problem. And I could spend hours just on distant starlight. I've got several videos just on that and books up there. So there are many creation scientists that believe the Bible. And this is just a list of a few. All these people have PhDs in astronomy, physics, and other things. There's actually a list on my website, meetingice.com. I think I have 100 listed there, where they got their degrees and universities they taught in. I have a link to about 350 more. As we started the presentation, we talked about 10 or so that created the field of astronomy. They were all Bible believers, and most scientific fields were established by Bible believers. The real issue is this: the heavens declare His righteousness, and all the people see His glory in Psalms 97, verse 6. Now, we have seen a pattern with the evolution model interpretation of cosmology. They don't record all the evidence. They constantly update the Big Bang model to match observable data. There's a disagreement among astronomers and a disregard for Bible interpretation. In Psalms 8, verse 3 and 4, it says, "When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him? The son of man that thou visitest him?" If you think about that, maybe sometime we can take out this telescope and I can show you some stars. You think you see a lot now? Wait till you look through that. All you see is more. And I'm sure that's all the bigger telescope you get, you see more and more. And what is man that God is mindful of us? That He's placed our galaxy somewhere in the center of the universe. It's kind of interesting to think about. This is one more reason why I don't believe in aliens, apart from evolution. But it seems that the whole creation was centered around this story that we're involved in. In Romans 3:19, the Bible says, "Now we know what things soever the law saith, it saith unto them that are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God." In other words, everyone knows right from wrong. We all know it's wrong to lie, to steal, to lust after people, to steal from our neighbors, to blaspheme God's name, and that law makes us guilty before God. The Bible says in Romans 3, verse 23, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. In Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Now Jesus said, the time is fulfilled, the kingdom of God is at hand, repent ye and believe the gospel. But God commanded his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent.
Yeah.
If you haven't done that, I would encourage you to do that today. Repent, get right with God. The heavens truly do declare the glory of God. And with that, if you guys didn't get the free little brochures, Jeff and Jordan, I can give you guys some of those here at the end. We do have some books for sale available back there. Just want to say special thanks to Mike Riddle. Got some information from him, Dr. Ken Helton, Dr. Jason Lyle, the Institute of Creation Research at ICR.org, Answers to Genesis, Dr. Dino, and CreationScience.com. Those are some sources that we get our information from. And I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. There's plenty of, like, if you want to know other subjects like carbon dating, dinosaurs with people, I've got there's giant posters up here. I've got stuff about the Earth being old and all that, all throughout here. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.
Cheers.